His love endures forever. Amen. Y'all can have a seat. All right, Exodus chapter 18, and we're going to look at, and I know for some of you when you hear this, you're like, oh, this is not going to apply, but it will. And in Exodus 18 is probably, in Moses' story anyway, the greatest lesson of leadership that you're going to find in Moses' story. And this is a guy that God used in a great way, and he is a leader. I love studying leaders in the Bible. Nehemiah was one of those guys, right? I mean, he goes, he's got a heart to go back to Jerusalem, and he surveys what has taken place in Jerusalem and how it's been torn down, the wall's been destroyed, and then he goes and he gets resources, he gets people, he rallies people to do what everyone said was impossible to do. See, a leader can motivate and move people to do. Now, that leader could be, you could be in leadership in your professional life, in your personal life, as a parent, as a grandparent. You have people who lead, or that you lead. Now, I'll say this, leaders aren't always loved. Sometimes it's difficult to be a leader. One of the great quotes that I've heard about leadership, I really like it. It says, you can be a leader or you can make everyone happy. If you want to make everyone happy, sell ice cream, right? You can do one or the other. The leader, and you notice this all the way through so far the book of Exodus. Moses is leading. He's taking God's word and he's giving it to God's people, and sometimes it's not popular. Sometimes it's not accepted. Sometimes they wanted to stone him for the word that he gave or the direction that he led them in. But oftentimes it is difficult to be the leader that God has called us to be. So I want to read through chapter 18, and then we're going to come back. There's 27 verses here, and so hang with me. We'll walk through it, and then I got a few questions I want us to ponder tonight, and some of it has to do with leadership. Other questions just has to do with practical interpersonal relationship stuff. Okay, and so. You remember the name of Moses' father-in-law, right? He was the shepherd. He's the one who owned all the sheep in Midian. His name, there was a Beverly Hillbilly named after him. Y'all remember? Jethro. I thought you was going to say he married Ellie Mae, right? No. Jethro was his father-in-law. So his wife, Moses' wife, and her daddy, and Moses' children are coming to see Moses where he is leading the people in the wilderness. And it's going to be like a family reunion, right? Except no fights. There's no talk about politics. There's no any of that stuff. But there, in Exodus 18, Jethro comes, and you're going to fall in love with this guy. Listen to what it says. It says, and Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back with her two sons, of whom the name of one was Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a foreign land, and the name of the other was Eleazar. For he said, the God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness where he was encamped at the mountain of God. Now, where's the mountain of God? So we have seen him. He was in Rephidim in chapter 16 or chapter 17 when he hit the rock. He's been at Marah, now Rephidim, they hit the rock. Remember, they were heading out of Rephidim where Amalek attacked the tail of the children of Israel, the folks in the back of this long caravan. And now they're in the mountain. They're at the mountain of God. They have shown up to Sinai. Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is that place where God is going to meet with Moses. In these next few chapters, God is going to show up in physical form, and he is going to meet with Moses on that mountain. And so Sinai will be called the mountain of God. It's because it's where Moses would go and meet him, all right? And so they're there. They're there at the mountain of God, and now he had said to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons with her. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. He bowed down and he kissed him. And they asked each other about their well-being, and they went into the tent. And so there's this greeting. It was this pleasantries. How have you been doing? I've been doing good. What about you? And then they go into the tent, and Moses told his father-in-law, I love verse 8. Moses is bragging on everything that God has done. And so since he has seen Jethro, you can imagine in the tent, Moses is like, listen, you're not going to believe everything that's been going on. I can't, it's so hard for me to even tell you everything. And so he talks about everything that God had done for the children of Israel dealing with Pharaoh. And so Moses, he walked Jethro through all of those plagues. You're not going to believe this, Paul, what God had done in Egypt, and he turned all of the water. I took the staff and it turned all of the water into blood. And he just walked his father-in-law through it. And the excitement in Moses' voice as he shared with his father-in-law and his family the testimony of God, how God has been faithful in his life. He said in verse 8, and Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and the hardships that had come upon them on the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. You're not going to believe this. We crossed the Red Sea, and the first place we get was Marah, and there was no water there. It was bitter, and they complained, and God told me to cut this tree down and throw it in the water, and the water became sweet. And God provided, and just right over the hill, we didn't know it, but right over the hill there were 12 wells of water. God just gave us more than we could ever imagine. It was just out of our sight. We had to trust him in Marah so that he would bless us on the other side of the hill. 12 springs of water, and all of the trees and the shade there in the wilderness, and we wanted to stay, but God, the cloud moved, and we ended up in Rephidim, and God provided again at the rock, just like you had taught me in the wilderness. I hit the rock with the staff, and water had come out, and all of God's people, 2 million of them, had water, and God has been so faithful. It's been up and down. It's been difficult. It's been those valley experiences, and then there's been those mountaintop experiences where God just showed up in miraculous ways. And Jethro rejoiced for all the good which the Lord had done for Israel, whom he had delivered out of the hand of the Egyptians. I mean, you can imagine in this tent, as Moses is giving great detail of everything that God has done, and his father-in-law rejoices with him. Now, hopefully this sounds familiar to you. Maybe you have experienced some of the same things as a family member who is like-minded with you in faith, and you share with them all the things that God has done. You brag on God and his faithfulness, and it hasn't always been easy. There's been ups and downs, but God has remained faithful, and to hear that loved one of yours rejoice with you in what God has done, this is a sweet time. This ain't Christmas at the house with the crazy uncle. I mean, this is time where they are bragging on God. They are praising God in this tent, and Jethro's getting fired up, and he's rejoicing with Moses about all that God's done. And Jethro said, "Blessed be the Lord who's delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of Pharaoh, and who has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now, I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods, for in the very thing in which they behaved proudly, he was above them. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and the other sacrifices to offer to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. And so out of this praise service, Jethro, who's the priest in Midian, and Aaron, who is the priest there for God's people, they offer a sacrifice. And it's another way for them to honor God for what he's done, and they're worshiping God in this moment. This family reunion breaks out into a prayer service, praise service. Look at verse 13. Jethro goes to work with Moses the next day. And I don't know if it was take your father-in-law to work day. I don't know if this was Groundhog Day and he was shadowing him, February the 2nd. I don't know what's going on. But Jethro's in town, and so Moses goes to do what Moses typically does. It was just a typical day in the life of Moses, the leader of the children of Israel, and Jethro goes with him just to see how things are going. So look at verse 13. So it was on the next day that Moses sat to judge the people. And the people stood before Moses from morning until evening. So when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did for the people, he said, "What is this thing that you're doing for the people? Why do you alone sit, and all the people stand before you from morning to evening?" Now, I want you to know something. Sometimes we get into routines that seem like they are logical to us, but from the outside, God may send somebody to say, "Bro, why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense at all." And that's what Jethro is doing. And so let me just keep reading, then we'll come back and look at it. And Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a difficulty, they come to me, and I judge between one and another, and I make known the statutes of God and his laws." I'm teaching them God's laws. So Moses' father-in-law said to him, "The thing that you do it's not good. Both you and the people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out." You're going to wear yourselves out. You're going to wear yourself out, Moses. One person doing all of this, but look, they're standing here waiting on you from morning until night. Both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out, for this thing is too much for you. You are not able to perform it by yourself. Listen now to my voice. I will give you counsel, and God will be with you. Stand before God for the people, so that you may bring the difficulties to God. And you shall teach them the statutes and the laws, and show them the way in which they must walk and the work they must do. Moreover, you got to select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. And let them judge the people at all times. Then it will be that every great matter that shall be brought to you, but every small matter that they themselves shall judge. They'll take care of the little stuff. So it'll be easier for you, for they will bear the burden with you. If you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all this people will also go to their place in peace. And Moses heeded the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. So they judged the people at all times. The hard cases they brought to Moses, but they judged every small case themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went his way to his own land. Now, in this, I want to start with this question, okay? This is not really as much about leadership, just as it is about interpersonal relationships. And I want you to write it down. Are you able to receive? Are you able to receive constructive observations from trusted friends? That's a big question. Are you able to receive? Now, sometimes we call it constructive criticism, but I call it constructive observations. Are you personally able to receive constructive observations? Now, I add from trusted friends because I think none of us are able to receive constructive observations from just anyone, right? I mean, we're going to talk about that, but are you able to receive constructive observations about your own life, about the way you're handling things, about the way you're living things, about the way you're treating people? Are you able to receive constructive observations from trusted friends? It's a valid question. Jethro was loved and trusted by Moses. Moses had spent 40 years with him in the wilderness. It wasn't just that Jethro was his father-in-law and part of the family and someone that he loved as his own dad, but Jethro was the one who went with him. Jethro was the one who has taught him. He made him a shepherd. He took a city boy out of Egypt and made him a country boy. He taught him things that Moses never would have learned in Egypt. Jethro poured into him. Jethro loved him. Jethro gave him his daughter. Jethro encouraged him. Jethro had relationship collateral. He was a trusted friend. Jethro was loved and trusted. And we see that in this reunion. It's probably not a typical reunion with a guy and the in-laws, right? I mean, we talk about in-laws. We make jokes about them. I have the best in-laws on the planet. God's blessed me with some of the most patient in-laws that any guy could ever have. They have loved me. They have pointed me. They have done so much for me, showing me Jesus, teaching me even how to be a husband, how to be a daddy. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law are the greatest in-laws anybody could ask for. Moses had a father-in-law like that. And when Jethro comes into town, it's very obvious that they have one of those relationships. And so when it gets down to Jethro observing the way Moses is doing professional life as a leader of Israel, he was able to speak into Moses and Moses receive it because of the relationship. It matters who is speaking to us. I want to share throughout this just my own story and testimony as God has allowed me to pastor here. When I came here, I was 26 years old. When I came on staff, I was 27 when I became pastor, and God just put guys around me that would speak into me and would just kind of put their arm around me. And some of those deacon meetings early on, it was just so. It's a miracle I'm still here. I'll just say that. This 27-year-old knew everything, just arrogant. They just walk along me, and I remember some of those times where, they just put their arm around me and loved me, even though sometimes I wasn't real lovable, and it was those moments. Now in that, I want to share a story with you. in this whole process of pastoring, God was wanting to open a door for us as a church to reach out in missions to reach a people group on the other side of the globe. And I had someone in our church hand me a book. Now, not to be ugly, who it was, I just kind of set it off to the side, right? Because some people have automatic credibility just because of how they love and how they invest, and then this individual just handed it to me, and I just kind of set it off to the side. It's like, I'll read that, maybe not, probably not ever. But about a month later, another guy handed me the exact same book. And I thought, all right, Lord, I got it. Now, this guy had relationship collateral. I mean, this guy and I mean, he could speak into my life. And he had no idea that I already had this book on my shelf. He had no idea anybody had given it. He gave me the exact same book. Well, I took that book in my arm, and then the next week I read that book from cover to cover. It was in that book that God really dealt with me and ultimately us as a church to adopt the Miao people in southern China. And just walking us through that process, it all started from that book. Now, a month earlier, I got the same book, but it matters who it is, right? It matters who speaks into us and who we allow even to speak into us. Sometimes those who desire to speak into our lives, it's always a word of criticism. And you know who those people are. It matters who's speaking. Do they have a vested interest? Do they have relationship collateral? Jethro asks two great questions in verses 13 and 14. I want you to look at them. Here it is. It's actually in verse 14, both of them. What is this thing that you're doing? What are you doing, Moses, for the people? And here's the second thing. Why are you doing it like that? You know, what's this that you're doing, and why are you doing it like that? Now, listen, somebody else could have come a month before and looked at this, and it didn't look right, and could have said the exact same thing to Moses, but when Jethro said it, he automatically had Moses' ear in that. I want you to know something. Early on, when I was pastoring, God was moving and doing things. I mean, I had never pastored a church before. I had no idea what I was doing, and I was telling Andrea, we were talking about this earlier when we were heading up here. I said, do you remember that night in the middle of the night when we were living in Country Place? So this was early on, probably 2005. The middle of the night, the phone rang. This is back when I had a landline. I ain't got a landline anymore. You got to look my number up, right? Boy, things have changed. You can't find my number, right? So we were going to look my number up, and they found my name. They looked my number up, and my phone rang in the middle of the night. And, of course, we had caller ID. I looked. I didn't know who the number was, but I picked it up because it was like 1 a.m. And I said, hello? And the guy on the other end of the phone, he said, are you the pastor at First Baptist Haughton? I said, yeah, I'm him. He said, are y'all the church that gives out the baskets of food at Thanksgiving? And we did. We helped Action give out baskets of food at Thanksgiving. I said, yeah, we do that. This is 1 a.m. I'm like, didn't realize I was going to have a pop quiz at 1 a.m., but yes, I'm that pastor, and yes, we do the baskets. He said, I got a word for you. Put the word in the basket. I said, you like the Bible? He said, put a Bible in the basket. I said, okay. That's a good word. Thank you. He said, I got another word for you. Have you ever gotten a phone call like this before, by the way? He said, I got another. This one's going to be fun. He said, I got another word for you. I said, okay, shoot. I mean, I'm up now, right? He said, you're going to make a decision, much like the decision that was made by the man in the Bible who was mooned by God. All right, let me run that one back by. 1 a.m, a man just told me, he said, you're going to make a decision like the man in the Bible that was mooned by God. I was like, okay, thanks. Hang up the phone. Andrew said, what was that? So I tell her, it's 1 a.m. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Because I'm thinking, who did God moon, right? And the only thing I could come up with is when God met Moses on that mountain. And Moses saw his backside. Remember? That God wouldn't allow him to see his face. And he said, I'm going to hide you in the cleft of the rock. And when I pass by, I'm going to hold my hand and I'll let you see my backside. And I thought, man, that's a great sermon title, A Man Mooned by God. Y'all may hear that when we get to that story. Man, I'm telling you what, man, I start going through the Bible. I'm like, what decision did Moses make? And it was about 3 a.m. I got to Exodus 18. And I started reading this about Jethro. Now, listen, I've just told you got to be careful who you let speak into your life. I don't even know who this guy was. I don't even know where he lived. But I want you to know something. Our church was growing so crazy at that time. Within a month, we brought Brother Scotty on full time to help with everything that was going on. He retired at Flowers Bread Company, and he came on full time. In that year, we had brought on Teresa to help with children. Scott was hired just a year before, and God was building a team. And when I read chapter 18, it was like there was a time where I felt like I was doing a lot, and now God was providing people to share the load with. And you and I have to be careful, though. Jethro asks Moses these questions. He said, why are you doing it like this? Because this doesn't make sense. And here's the second question. Are you doing something that someone else can do? Now, that's hard because whether it's ministry, you may teach a life group, you may teach a journey group, this may speak to you in your professional life, something at work, something in your personal life. Are you doing something somebody else can do? That's essentially what Jethro told Moses. He said, Moses, you're doing something that other people can do. They can take this load off of you. About 5 years into ministry here, I realized that First Baptist Haughton was beyond what I could handle. And that was hard. I went on a walk to Emmaus. I don't know if you've ever been on that, but a couple in our church said, hey, I want to send you on a walk. And I went to Mississippi on a walk to Emmaus. I was away from everybody. And, man, I'll just tell you, God got all over me. I went there, I was exhausted. A week or two prior to going on that walk, I sat in my office, and it was late in the evening, and man, all the stuff was good that was going on. People were coming, and we couldn't keep up with contacting folks, and I had a knock on the back door. It's probably 5:30, and I went to the back door, and I've told this story before. I've told it a couple of different times. One was at his funeral. When I walked to the back door, and Glenn Alderman was at the back door. Glenn was the pastor at Bell Park Baptist Church. Glenn grew up here. He had been at Bell Park for several years, 20. And I was in seminary with Glenn, and he was just pouring into me. He had been doing this for a long time. And so he knocks at the back door. He was going to pick Ben up at band practice. He saw my truck, and it was 5:30 or so. And he said, man, what are you doing? And I said, man, I can't keep up. It's just crazy. We had all these, I'm sitting there thinking, man, we've had all these salvations. I got to get into people's homes. I got to talk to people about baptism and all this. And Glenn said, man, don't you have a couple of little ones at home? I said, yeah, I do. He said, will you listen to an old fat preacher? I said, yeah, I guess. He was sitting in my office. He said, Gavin, you can win everybody to Haughton to Jesus. But if those two boys grow up and go to hell, it won't be worth it. He said, go home. Man, I left out of here that afternoon, and I went home, and God used Glenn Alderman. I come back from a walk to Emmaus, and I stood on that orange carpet over in our chapel over there. Some of you don't even remember it, knew it was orange. It was horrible. I preached that Sunday. God had a heavy heart. And God had impressed in me at that walk to Emmaus, hey, Gavin, you've got a divorce, First Baptist Haughton. And I stood up at the end of the service. I said, hey, before you go, I got to divorce you. And boy, people were like, what are you talking about? I said, I can't be married to Andrew and be married to y'all at the same time. And God's given us some people. God's given us some deacons. God's given us some Sunday school teachers. We called them Sunday school teachers at that time. It was before Scott changed the name of everything around here. And I said, hey, if one of our staff comes by the hospital, when you're in the hospital, you just were seen by the pastor. I said, I can't make it to all of them. I stay up here or I'm at your home, and I feel guilty because I'm not with my boys and my bride. I said, or I'm at my home with my boys and my bride, I feel guilty because I'm not in your home. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And you're officially divorced. And I want you to know something. God just started teaching me, and it all came from Glenn Alderman. It came from those guys that poured into me and walked to Emmaus, and they were teaching me what Jethro was teaching Moses. And he says it in this verse. He says, you are going to wear yourself out in verse 18. I want you to know something. Early on, I was wearing myself out. And I want you to know something. It happened again. And it was about 10 years in. It was 2012. And our church had just gone through some crazy stuff. In 2011, beginning of 2012. And most people around here don't even know we had to have somebody removed from our church from a security issue. 2011, we had one of our church members arrested. 2012, we were adopted. We adopted this people group, and we were sending the first family to China to reach them. God was doing some neat things, but in the midst, Satan was attacking. In that time, I don't even know if we told y'all this. We get a phone call from our custodians in the office, and they said, we just found bombs on the front door of the sanctuary. And this is in the middle of the day. We said, what are you talking about? He said, there's Molotov cocktails on the front welcome mat in the front door of the sanctuary. This was all at the same time. I mean, we've had somebody removed, we've got somebody in jail, and now we got Molotov. I've never even seen a Molotov cocktail. There were 3 of them in a little plastic bag, and we called the sheriff's department, the fire department, and some of those guys came, and I'm telling you, these were like really put together well. I mean, waxed lids and gasoline in it. And, of course, we were wigging out. We're like, someone's about to blow up the church, right? There was a note inside the bag, and it was a guy locally that said, hey, look, I put these together last night because I was going to burn my girlfriend up in our home. And when I woke up this morning, I realized, and he had been drunk or whatever, he said, I realized that didn't happen. And he said, I'm bringing them here and asking for forgiveness. I want you to know something. I could write a book about the crazy things that have happened around here, right? So in 2012, I'm just like, God, we got bombs showing up at the church. We got church members going. And I want you to know something. In 2012, I don't know what day it was. I was looking in my office. I'm going to clean up around here. And I started picking stuff up in my back study, and I'd carry it out to my truck. And I just made one trip after another until I looked at my truck, and I'd moved everything out of my office into my truck. I drove home, and I started unpacking my office, and Andrew said, what are you doing? And I said, I don't know. I feel like it's time to go. I feel like I was just so low. And I don't know if you get to those places where you wear yourself out. But that's where I was in 2012. And I don't know that I've ever even told a group of people this before. I certainly never said this in 2012. Y'all are wigged out on me, right? It was the closest I'd ever come. Had a church called me in 2012, I wouldn't be here right now because I knew where I was. It was time to go. And Jethro was trying to keep Moses from getting to that place. And God was so faithful in all of those things in my life. Are you doing something that somebody else could do? Here's the last question, and I'm out of time. Are you willing to hand responsibility to capable people? And that's a big thing. Delegation is not a curse word, and it's not for lazy people. And a lot of times they say, well, he just delegates everything. He doesn't do his job. He delegates everything. It's biblical. Delegating responsibility. Are you willing to hand something to a capable person? Is there something that you don't need to do that somebody else can do? And if there is, are you willing to hand that something to somebody else? Here's something I want you to write down. Why would we do this? That's exactly what Jethro told Moses. And so Moses heeded the voice in verse 24 of his father-in-law and did all that he had said, and he chose able men, capable men. We don't delegate responsibility. We don't hand it off to bodies with heartbeats that are breathing. You have to find individuals who are capable. And are you willing to hand responsibility to capable people? If you do, this will allow you to work in your wheelhouse. That's 19 and 20. He said, now Moses was able to teach the statutes. He was able to teach while these other people did the judging on the small cases. Moses was doing things God never intended for Moses to do, and he had filled his life with activity. And it was good, but it wasn't what God wanted him to do. Now, you may not be a pastor, you may not be the leader of a bunch of people, but I think this is applicable to all of us, whether it's personal or professional life, or maybe here at the church. Are you doing something somebody else can do? If you are, is there somebody that God has already put in your circle that you could hand that responsibility off if they're capable to handle it? And so Moses heeded that word, and he handed responsibility off to able people. Here's another thing it will do. It will allow you to empower other leaders. Some of you have taught life group for decades. You think, where's the off-ramp for this? Is it time for me to stop? Is it time for... It is if you'll hand that off to someone capable, right? If you're training, getting on that off-ramp, it allows you to hand that responsibility off and allow someone else to lead. And so I would encourage you, if you have something that God's given you, look for someone that's already around you that you can bring up to do it. It could be your professional job. It could be ministry, church-related. It could be personal life. Pouring into the next leader who will take the baton after you. All right. Exodus chapter 18. A lot of practical stuff. And my prayer is that it's applicable. Let me pray for you, okay? God, your word's true. God, when we look at this from a leadership perspective, so many leadership truths in here, God, we could be here all night. God, just personally, I see how your hand has moved and worked and brought me to this passage so many times in the last 20-something years. God, just to mold me into who you want me to be. And God, just to hand off responsibility and leadership to capable and able people. God, thank you for the team of pastors that you've brought here. God, thank you, Father, for the leadership, the lay leadership that you have raised up here. God, whether it's deacons who serve this church or life group leaders who have groups of people who teach and they love and they walk through life with them. God, thank you for who you have brought here. But God, this group of leaders won't be the same group of leaders tomorrow. God, we need to raise up the next generation of men and ladies who will lead, who will love, who will encourage. God, help us to do that. Show us who they are. And God, let us hand over those responsibilities and opportunities for them to serve and to serve you well. God, we love you, and we ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, well, bye. See y'all Sunday.
When your week feels like a beat down, you can't tell the night from day, and you're tired.